I'm Debbie Travis.
And I'm Tommy Smythe.
And this is Trust Me, I'm a Decorator.
Hello, Anya Lautenbach. Amazing to have you back. I feel like we're old friends now. This is your second appearance on Trust Me, I'm a Decorator, and we are so thrilled to have you, especially in light of the fact that it is springtime.
Oh, thank you so much, guys. I remember last time we met, I was in the middle of writing my book, and now I'm here holding my book.
Oh, Anya, congratulations. And it's a bestseller. Hold it up a bit more. I want to see it.
Yes, I'm thrilled.
Money Saving Gardener. Gosh, so you've built an amazing following. I think whenever you try and save people money, they're going to tune in. But you've done all this around, container gardening, proper gardening in, beautiful gardens and things. And you basically, you've taught me so much, and, I'm going to kind of ask you a billion questions. But first, I just want to say, yes, you were working on the book when we talked to you, and now it's a bestseller.
Yes, congratulations.
And I was at a lunch party on Sunday, a girls' thing, and the birthday girl got your book.
Oh.
And that's why I suddenly said, oh my God, let's get Anya back on. And she got it as her birthday present. And that was the photo I put up. I sent you.
Oh, amazing. And you looked amazing as well. You both looked amazing on that photo you shared with me. It's great to be back. And I've been so busy promoting the book. And as you quite rightly said, my book became an instant Sunday Times bestseller, which is amazing for someone like me, my self-taught gardener. I just do what I love. And it's just absolutely amazing to see how many people are already benefiting from all the work I put into it around the world. Not only here in the UK, US. Recently, someone sent me a message from India, Tasmania. It's incredible.
Wow.
I think because it hits everybody, whether you're living in an apartment with no balcony, there are things you can grow in pots. And what you specialize in is how to kind of propagate, which is not Tommy's sex life. It's how to provide plants and
Not even close.
How to take a normal rose. Like you showed me, I don't get many flowers from my husband. Well, none actually, but no, nothing. Okay, I did get a rose in a pot after we talked last year, and I propagated it, and it's working. And so out of that one little supermarket rose, I now have like 6 roses. So I think it's that great feeling. And, if you buy 6 roses in the nursery, you're going to spend, $20, $30. So I got it for nothing. And I think that's what kind of really what's behind this. And I think the other thing is also why you have so many followers on Instagram, which is where I got to know you, is because your tutorials are incredibly clear. So you're saying, aren't you lucky? But it's not. I think when you're self-taught, you're kind of as flabbergasted as everybody else that you've done it and, oh my God, it works. And so your enthusiasm really comes across in this step-by-step, very, very clear little videos. And, I think that's your thing.
Oh.
So it's spring because everybody pretty much around the world, except Southern Hemisphere, is really starting to look at their gardens and go, right. So Tommy's in Canada. People are planning and plotting. I'm in London, where it's pissing with rain again. So, and it has rained here, hasn't it, Tanya, for really, I don't know,
God.
a year?
It's like, my garden, I'm only half an hour away from London. So, we look at the same rain.
Oh, it is. England is like a soggy sponge at the moment. It is incredible. And it's actually quite serious because a lot of the crops are just rotting. But anyway, that's another story. But in England, we have probably the best climate in the world, wouldn't you say?
For propagation. Absolutely.
Yeah, for propagation and planting, because occasionally we get sun, but we get a lot of rain and we have the right temperature. In Canada, it's a little bit more challenging. And I know we have lots of Canadians listening. And the northern states, because we have a shorter summer. And I found when I lived there that a lot of things were annuals. A lot of people are using the same thing because it's safer, but you can be more experimental, can't you?
Absolutely. And The fact that we are experiencing climate change is obviously, on the one hand, it's not very positive. On the other, it allows us to do things that we were not able to do 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And quite rightly, as you said, we can look at things from a positive point of view and slightly less positive. The fact that we have a lot of rain, or that they have, in Canada, they may have shorter summers, there's always a positive aspect of it, because a lot of plants can be propagated in the winter time. And there's not a day, I always say to people, there's not a day in the year, and there's not place in the world that something cannot be propagated. And that's something that I'm really keen on spreading around the world, because propagation is not only that you save money and you create plants, but it's so good, as you quite rightly said, with your roses. The sense of achievement and the sense of accomplishment is something that is so positive, and we need everywhere around the world. The more positivity we bring to the world, the better.
Yeah, it's a very good point. But just to be quite clear, because I'd never heard of that word until I met you. So propagating actually means like splitting a plant and growing another plant from a plant.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
actually, I'm Polish, so English is not my language. And I have lots of British friends who say that they have never heard of the word propagation until they met me. So, it's quite funny.
Yeah.
Propagation means multiplying. And I often use in my videos and also in my book, you can make things more complicated by giving them certain terms that the whole world is thinking, what on earth is she talking about? Yeah, so it's basically, propagation is multiplying or creating for free. And, we all know the word creating or multiplying, making more. And that's what propagation is. And some clever people came up with this propagation.
Well, Anya, the subtitle of your book is Create Your Dream Garden at a Fraction of the Cost. And I think there's something so satisfying about propagation and about that aspect of gardening in general, because there are so few things, in my view, in life that are free. That old expression, the best things in life are free. Maybe the best thing in life is a garden. If you applied this, for instance, to what I do for a living, which is interior decorating, if you take a chair and you split the leg off the chair and you stick it in your living room, guess what? It's not going to grow a new chair. But if you take the lessons in your book, and apply those, the Money Saving Gardener book, and apply those to your garden, you actually can end up with a larger, more fruitful, more robust garden for literally nothing. And that is just so rare in life. And I think a huge part of your appeal is just the honesty of saying, if you put a little work into it, it's so satisfying. The rewards are so satisfying because they're physical rewards.
They're also practical, aren't they? Because when we first spoke to Anya, I love coriander or cilantro. Very, very hard to find in Italy. It's not part of their kind of diet. But occasionally it comes into the supermarket. So Anya said to me, wait till it's in the supermarket and get a little pot. Then you split the pot, you split that tiny, whatever it is, $3 plant, and then you put it into another pot all around the edge. This winter, it grew so much like a weed. I took all the seeds and now the seeds. So now I have, like, Tommy, you'll be there in a few weeks. You'll see it. I have so much coriander. I'm taking it to dinner parties and please take a plant. So now I'm sharing my plants with other people so that my whole valley is propagating. It's
Oh,
amazing.
it's amazing. All the herbs. I did, when I create videos, I also like to give people a bit of extra information why we do it. Some plants make more sense to propagate, some not so much. But, in the UK, and I don't know about Canada, but if you look at the packaging of herbs, for example, that are very easy to grow on your windowsill, they come from all over the world, from Kenya. And just think, if I always think, I'm just a little person, and what difference can I make? But actually, I am making a massive difference, because I tell you, and then you go to a dinner party and you tell other people that they can grow their own herbs on their windowsill. And this way, we're really making a huge difference to our environment. So another box ticked.
in cities like, for instance, like Toronto, a lot of people live in apartments, a lot. And sometimes they think, well, I don't have a garden. I don't even have a balcony. But with
Yeah,
herbs, you can get little pots. You just stick in some seeds. I mean, you make some holes
totally.
with your finger, stick in some seeds, and in a few weeks you'll have a little sprout,
Yeah,
and then you'll have herbs. Far better than it's been sitting in a supermarket. Far better than dried, where a lot of the scent and the flavor has gone. And the more you cut herbs, the more they grow. So you
absolutely.
makes you use them, which is, and it
Yes.
looks nice. It
Yes,
looks really lovely.
and it's this kind of, I think we go back to the kind of hunter gatherers, that we feel good. I analyzed it, as you know, I've got ADHD, so I constantly search for a dose of dopamine, something positive. There are obviously other sources of not so positive dopamine, but this is the best thing you can do, not only for neurodivergent people, but for everybody, because you create something for free. And few seeds, if you put them in a pot on your windowsill, it just gives you that sense of achievement. I'm sure that our brain produces dopamine or whatever from seeing them germinate.
And it's long lasting. Whereas, you go out shopping and you buy something, it's an immediate, or you look on Instagram, it's an immediate hit. But so you have ADHD. So has this calmed you down then?
Um, you probably even see, I'm sitting on a wooden chair just so I don't turn around, because if I've got this office chair, I'm constantly moving around. It slowed me down on many levels. Maybe didn't slow me down on, I constantly want to achieve things and, bigger things, more, more, more. So that's kind of my side of ADHD that will probably never stop. But it gives me a very healthy dose of dopamine. I'm very honest about the fact that in the past I've been on many different paths, and not all of them were the good ones. And that's probably why I'm so keen on spreading this message and sharing with people that it does slow you down to a certain degree, because you give yourself a break sometimes. When you plant something, or when you take cuttings, this is the only place that I don't think about the past or the future,
Oh,
because
that's interesting.
I
Yeah.
only look at like when you look at the seedlings or when you look at the seeds, my brain is always working. And this is the time, the garden is the only place where I really don't think much about the past, planning for the future. Is just living now. And it's so good. It's like a
Yeah.
therapy for your mind.
Yeah. So anybody who's going through something, I mean, they don't have to be ADHD, but if you're going through some kind of tough times or trauma, or even a child, I think, who's a bit hyper, getting out into the garden. And I feel that I'm a bit, I don't know if I'm ADHD, I wouldn't dare get tested, but I think I have all the symptoms. But, I'm constantly thinking, constantly doing stuff. I never sit down.
Yeah.
But when I go out, I can spend an hour on my knees in the sunshine, digging holes, and I just feel great. And I stopped thinking. You're absolutely right. Because if I was doing something like the washing up inside, I'd be like, oh God, I should have done that. And I should have done that. And that person didn't call. And, I'd be worrying about all kinds of
Mm.
things. But in a garden, I don't know, somehow you're so self-absorbed into the earth and the surroundings that it seems to stop those kind of crazy nerve endings from going, the noise in your head, and I'm sure for children, this must be an amazing therapy, growing something, especially food.
Yeah, I know that for a lot of people experiencing grief, if they've got even just a balcony garden or a container garden or a windowsill garden, tending to plants can really help with that process. But I wanted to ask you, Anya, going back to this idea of herbs and things like rosemary and thyme and cilantro and food. One of the things that I appreciate so much about your message and about your social media platform and now this book is that you're very thoughtful about the effect that the world and the environment around us has on gardens and vice versa. That Britain is going through an economic crisis right now, so propagating plants and allowing people to have things that are less expensive is a huge priority for many Britons. And then there's also this notion of the environment and climate change and all of those things. And I wondered, is food itself, I've seen you do so many things with beautiful flowers, hydrangea, hellebores, lavender in your own garden. Do you have a vegetable garden? Do you have a kitchen garden that you love? And as we get into that season of starting to think about tomatoes and cucumbers and things that we might eat from our own gardens, what are you planting this season?
Oh, do you know? Yes, I absolutely do. So, in fact, I'm pretty self-sufficient when it comes to food. So, I've got a very large vegetable plot. I'm currently harvesting cauliflower and broccoli,
Wow.
rocket, chives.
Already?
So, it's all, we've been growing food for, I come from Poland, so this was just the way of surviving. So, absolutely. And again, going back to the high cost of living crisis, or even people who live in flats, they can grow, strawberries. They can grow, as we just said, herbs on the windowsills. So giving those ideas
Mhm.
to people who, if they have money, it's great. If they can grow in large gardens, but anyone can grow a certain level, their own food. Obviously, they will not become self-sufficient if they only have a windowsill, but they can still have herbs for the rest of their life if they want on the windowsill.
Which can be costly in the grocery store, in the market.
Absolutely. I mean, it really adds up. Especially as it's actually not only Britain, is the world is facing the high cost of living crisis. So we have to give people tools and ideas. You go to a supermarket, you buy a pot of chives, for example, and you can create 10 plants out of it. And there's so
Yeah.
many herbs you can divide. So absolutely, absolutely. And I love growing food.
Patrick and I grew cherry tomatoes. We were actually given by some friends who were going away for many months and couldn't take care of them a few cherry tomato plants in pots. And we put them, we happen to have a roof deck on our house. So it gets a lot of very hot sun, and the tomatoes love that. And so we had for one summer harvest after harvest after harvest of these little bowls of beautiful sweet cherry tomatoes, and I learned how to make so many things, pasta sauce. I would oven roast them nearly dried out, and they had so much flavor. I just so enjoyed making, like, growing food that I could eat. And I had always grown herbs. I'd always had basil plants, rosemary, things that you could clip off and chop up and put in recipes. But the actual, like, fruit, like the tomato,
Mm.
was such a revelation for me. It's so much fun to grow and to eat.
We're going to take a quick break. Be right back.
I'm Sarah Burke, and I host the Women in Media podcast, where I'm exploring the challenges women face in the media spotlight and celebrating our triumphs. My guests come from radio, TV, news, and sports, and we'll cover topics like leadership, diversity, stereotypes, and more. Most of all, I'm looking to build a community through a space where we can discuss anything. The Women in Media podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or at womeninmedia.ca.
I think when you're growing it yourself, you have this respect. You have respect for when it doesn't work, and you have respect for the land when it does work. And you realize, I mean, for instance, strawberries, because strawberries do so well for so long. I mean, my strawberries go from kind of May, from now in a way, right through till November. They keep coming and coming, but they're small.
Yeah.
Then you go in the supermarket and you see these over bulbous, what is it? The dirty dozen and the clean 15. Well, the number one dangerous fruit or vegetable is strawberries, because most of them in the rest of the year are coming in, and they're coming in with so much spray on them because of the little dots. That spray really, it's virtually impossible to get the pesticides off a strawberry. So when you grow them, you know where they're from. And I am so into this, that the fact that once you start, you know where that herb came from. You know it's not been sprayed. You don't need to spray if it's in your house. You're not coming from some huge, commercial farm. And pick 4 little strawberries. Give them to your kids after school. You have them while you're watching a movie. Instead of tucking into a great big oversized, overjuicy basket that cost, whatever, coming in from South America. It's a different food. It's a completely, because you think you're doing well because you bought vegetables in the supermarket, but actually you have to be so careful today because of the stuff that's on it. But when you take control, when you grow it yourself. And I know you can't grow everything, but then the other thing, like when you said about tomatoes, if you do get a wonderful crop, and even if you don't, you go to a farmer's market where they're locally grown, and then you've got your tomatoes for the winter. And we do this in Italy all the time. By end of July, I just throw them in a pot, bit of celery, bit of salt and pepper, and I've got sauces in the freezer in plastic bags lined up that will take us through the winter.
Yeah.
Debbie,
yeah.
Are your pesticide-free strawberries also deer pea free?
The deer don't seem to bother them. They do pee in my lemon trees, but Hans may pee in them. I don't know. But yes, they're pea free. But but listen, I'm sure pea won't hurt you, but pesticides will. But I think that's another. There's so many angles to this. And then if you have a vegetable garden, I would always, and I'm sure you agree with this, Anya, that raised beds are much better, I think, anywhere, because in Canada, in the cities, the soil is not very good. So that by having a raised bed, you can make sure you've got really good soil, potting soil, add to it every year, add things like crushed up eggshells, stuff, waste that you've got in the kitchen. You just add as a natural fertilizer. And then things like carrots, oh my God, they just grow. And then I don't know if we said this a few weeks ago, but somebody told me, I never knew this, that when a carrot goes into a funny shape, we always used to have a big laugh at weird shaped carrots. It's because they've hit a stone. So the root has gone off in a weird direction. But kids can grow carrots. There are certain things that are just really easy, and I think it's really good to start with stuff that if you read your book, that we know work. Because you don't want too many failures, because that just puts you off. But a raised bed doesn't, cost much. You can buy them, or you can just stick some planks together.
Yes, or you can grow strawberries in hanging baskets. In my book, there is a project about. I didn't include a huge amount of edibles, because I might write a book about edibles just dedicated to edibles in the future. But I did this project with hanging baskets, just thinking of people who are just in flats. They could maybe have it, or have a balcony, because I also, now I have a big garden, but there was a time I lived in central Berlin, and I also lived in central London, and I didn't have even no outdoor space. So if you have a balcony, you can have your hanging baskets. You can be harvesting tomatoes and strawberries even on the balcony.
Yeah, and they keep coming and coming.
Totally.
Once they're going,
yes,
once they've taken, they'll keep coming. So, Anya, tell us, because I've seen pictures of what your garden looked like before, and it used to look like a field.
Totally. Yes. So I started with, and I love sharing this because, I am very honest. I think that's my other ADHD traits. People with ADHD are pretty honest, straight to the point. There's no hiding any facts. And I like that because, and I hope people can see that on my social media, that whatever I show, I am so real. I don't have an army of professional gardeners, in the background preparing things. So I really have propagated probably about 95% of all plants growing here. And, it's just something so incredibly rewarding when I think about it, even for me looking at the pictures. And bear in mind, I did it when I was heavily pregnant with a full-time job in sales and a toddler.
Oh my goodness.
In fact, my son was nearly born. I don't know if I told you that last time, that my second son, Edward, was nearly born next to a wheelbarrow full of manure.
Strong lad.
Imagine to have said, so where were you born? Oh.
Oh, an auspicious start.
So it was, yes, I just, and again, I'm thinking about it now and thinking, yeah, that was so much ADHD, like almost in labor, but still pushing a wheelbarrow with full of manure, the last minute jobs before he comes along.
So, Anya, did you plot it out? Did you do drawings of the garden? Did you have a plan, or did you just go, oh, I'm just going to put the, because I'm very scatty and I'll just go, okay, I'll try that there. And I'm always moving plants. I think that's my problem. Oh, I don't
Yes.
like the tulips here. Next year, I'm going to take all the bulbs out. I'm going to put them over there. And even when they're growing, I'm doing it at all the wrong time. But did you have a plan?
No, I didn't. And, in fact, I actually didn't realize that I have created this garden. You mentioned grief. I was totally heartbroken at that point, and I can talk about it freely. I had loads of counseling in recent months, especially because I was talking about it a lot. And every time I would mention lavender hedges, I would be in tears because it was quite dramatic. It was, I don't remember if I told you, I started creating this garden the day when my mum phoned me and told me that my sister had a baby. And she said there were complications. And initially, I thought it was just complications, nothing serious, but it was the most serious thing. And it was devastating because I obviously had my own baby. And it was the only accessible thing for me to do to bring some positivity into my world. I think it was an instinct to go, my husband was at work every day and I was on maternity leave. And I, just like you, Debbie, I didn't make a plan. I'm not a professional gardener or a designer. I have just taken a spade. I fed my son. I put him in a little swing. It was a summer, beautiful, beautiful summer afternoon in August 2011, sorry. And I've taken a spade and I started digging. And at some point, I found myself on my knees with my hands in the soil. And that's what I later realized that was so positive and so helpful. And later, I also understood that there are some microbes in the soil. That's why we feel so good afterwards. This was my only accessible thing to do to bring some sort of sanity into the world of devastating news. So that phone call has changed my life forever. I become a very sad person. But the only thing that I had at that point that was keeping me sane and giving me purpose to get up in the morning was the garden. And, inch after inch, I would just take a spade, bad news from home. I would just put my little son in the swing. I would take a spade and start digging. And it gradually started growing. And it was a few years later when I just suddenly stood back and I couldn't believe it. I looked at this garden and I said, oh my God, I have lavender hedges. I have herbaceous borders. How did that happen? And I think it was a bit of I was so heartbroken that some days I really struggled to get up, even though I had my own kids. My sister lost both her sons in that time. And I ended
I'm
up
so
with
sorry.
yeah, it was, she has created a garden. She's one of my followers, actually. And she started creating her own garden. I said to her, do it, just have this vision of some positivity. And it was unbelievably healing. Some days later, when the boys passed away, I walked around the garden and I tried to find answers. I said, why did that happen to someone so lovely? I haven't found any answers, but I found a source of positivity and something that I can now share with everybody else. And perhaps this is why I feel so strongly about, writing books and putting it into, simple videos. So other people, if they find themselves in similar situation, something you can't plan and you have no control and you can lose your mind.
You can, or you can turn to other things because you need something to take that pain away. So people turn to smoking or drinking or drugs or aggression, and so by taking that pain and soothing it a little bit, and you're right about in the soil, the micro whatever's You know,
Microbes.
I feel that as well. You know, you know, and sometimes you'll pick a worm out and you say, okay, you can go over there, or a snail. All that, it's life. And I think when you've lost somebody, here you're seeing life going on in the dirt. There's always
Yes.
something moving in front of you. And I think because gardening has changed so much, we're not spraying our gardens like we used to. We're not killing all those germs, all those, you know, little cretins that are out there. Because they're doing their job and you realize how important
Yes.
they are. So I think it's become so much more holistic anyway, hasn't it?
Totally. And I always say, dirty hands, happy mind. I mean, like positively dirty,
Yeah, yeah.
I always have dirty nails everywhere I go. Absolutely. I analyzed it on so many levels over the years because when I understood how healing it was for me, I just wanted other people to get that positivity. And I tried to understand, and I think it was because you feel in control. And what gives us anxiety and pushes us into the less positive stuff is when we lose control, when we start feeling anxious, we just want to escape into something. And that could be alcohol, drugs, all sorts of things. But this is a positive journey. You escape into something so positive, and you feel like you create life. So people who have lost their loved ones, I always say, I get hundreds of messages from people all around the world, and I do read them. I do read people's stories, and it always goes back to the same feeling that I had that day when my mom phoned me. I lost control over events that, I could always protect my sister. My sister's younger than me, 7 years younger. And I always felt like, I can protect her, I can make a difference. My ADHD always gives me that, I can do whatever I want. I was always like that. And suddenly I found myself so little, and I started feeling really anxious. And I think that if I wouldn't have the garden, I don't think I would be still here, because I did have, it was only
Wow.
one moment where I did use this word, feeling suicidal. I just thought, this is too much. This is just too much.
So your garden really saved your life. Like it just totally saved your life. And I think that is so brave of you, so courageous to share that. And yeah, I thank you for that, because I think sharing that will help a lot of people, not just to find maybe a path through grief, through gardening, but just to understand that they're not alone in the world, and that we all can experience these feelings, and that we can all actually move through them as well. That things are not ever as hopeless as they might seem.
Mm.
So I think that's incredible. I
Mm.
wanted to ask you too, speaking of, this kind of positivity and turning things around, I think a lot of people, at least I've heard from many people, whose attitude towards gardening is, well, I tried it and I had a few failures and so I gave up. So can we talk a little bit about failure in gardening, and how you can turn that around a little bit? What would you say to people who say, I want to give it up just because I failed a few times?
Oh, I always say to people, you just must to come around or see what I have killed here in my garden. How many cuttings, and even they thrive, and I feel like brilliant, and then suddenly they die. Again, it's just to accept. Nothing is perfect, and our gardens can teach us that. It's the same with relationships, it's the same with things that are around us. Our gardens can teach us. Sometimes things just die, but you keep going. You have to keep going, keep trying, don't give up, never ever give up.
You're the Winston Churchill of gardening.
Yeah.
That
But it's also
Oh,
trial and error, isn't it? And so, and it is
absolutely.
nobody. I think the most professional gardener is. I mean, I have big gardens in Italy and a lot of land, and you can buy. I bought, I don't know, 25 cypress trees from the
Yeah.
same place. Why do two die and
Yeah,
some live? I mean, you just don't know. It's just the way it is, and it's the way of the world. Like, why
totally.
does one person have a bad thing happen to them and not another?
Yeah.
It's just, who knows. This is the whole thing about life. But it's that trial and error. So if somebody was listening to this, maybe they're having a tough time and they've got a little tiny garden or a little front garden that maybe has been the same, because a lot of people have the same old gardens. How do they start? Do you get inspiration, or do you do a little drawing? What would you suggest? What's step one?
First thing, just take a plant pot and just start growing something, because if one success will lead to the next, always focus on just one simple thing. For me, it was just focusing on that one thing. If something germinates, you think, oh, I've managed to germinate some seeds, or I've taken a few cuttings. So just this one simple thing. And then once you see your success, it's in life as well. You know, when you have a success, you think, oh, I can do it. So, and the feeling is so good. It makes you feel great. So, one simple thing. I think before you, obviously, everybody's in different position. You know, if someone wants to design a massive garden, they can. But I would just focus, even if you have designers, just have your own little plant pot and that one simple task that you feel like you have contributed, you have succeeded, and this success will lead to another one because you will want more of it.
How do you know this is a personal question. How do you know what size? So if you buy some seeds and you think, okay, I'm going to seed them first in a pot, you know, without having to have so many steps of reseeding, you know, when they come through, why do they always show you in tiny little seed trays? Why can you not just stick them in a big pot and leave them there?
Yeah, you could.
Lazy
I mean,
gardening.
you know, there is a lot of there's obviously every plant requires different planting. Some seeds you can actually scatter around the garden. You know, you don't have, like, for example, opium poppies. I know it's not legal in some countries. Germany, I think, isn't. Don't know in Canada, but you know, there's so many plants that you can just take the seeds. You don't have to start in pots.
And you can get the seeds from buying the poppies, can't you? So you let the seeds go black. So
Yes.
I try and do that because there's a lot of wild poppies
Mhm.
coming now in Italy in May. And I wait for them on the banks until they're dry.
Yes.
But they never really work.
Oh, really? Do you know poppies need
No.
exposure to light? And that's why it's so important to know that you can actually scatter them around. And I think how amazing. This is almost like nature is made for busy gardeners. You know, that you can just take the seeds. And this is what my mother-in-law used to say. She said, scatter them around and then wait for the surprises. And then, you know, with poppies, for example, if they work, again, they need exposure to light, but they like floral fireworks. You know, they just come, they don't last, but they just, oh.
Okay, I have another question that I've been wanting to ask you for ages. When you buy cilantro seeds in a supermarket to crush and put into food, you know, you can buy these little tiny, hard, tiny seeds. Could you actually use those to grow, or are they different for when you see
I
them
think,
for eating?
do you know, I don't know if I don't often use them actually. Well, you know, I've never tried, but again, nothing stops us from trying. You know,
Yeah,
I've
exactly.
never tried. So I don't know if they treat them somehow, if they dry them, or
Yeah,
treat them with something that stops them from germinating. But maybe this is something for our listeners, you know, to try and let us know
yeah.
if just to try, just to, you know, to challenge yourself and try things that nobody has done before.
I have tried ginger. So you know
Yes,
when you buy stuff and you leave it and it starts rooting in your fruit bowl.
yes,
So I tried ginger when it started sprouting, an old piece of ginger that didn't work. But then I did a potato,
yeah,
and oh my god, I got
yes,
potato. One potato.
yes. Or lemongrass,
Oh, I haven't done lemongrass.
very
Wow.
easy to grow. You know.
You don't have to be in a very steamy climate for lemongrass
No,
because I always
no,
think
we
of
have.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's easy.
Well, listen, this is our time. So I want to say to you, Anya, this has been always very, very illuminating. The book is The Money Saving Gardener: Create Your Dream Garden at a Fraction of the Cost by our wonderful friend, Anya Lautenbach. Now, this book, we'll have all the information about it in the notes on our podcast. And I just want to say, Debbie, I discovered on this podcast that you have strawberries that I never knew about at the villa. So we'll have to talk about that offline. I want a map to where they are when I come to visit
They're
soon.
right by the door. They're always in pots there.
And Anya, I'm going to be in your area this spring with Patrick. So maybe we'll do a little drive by and grab a few cuttings.
Oh, that would be fun.
Anytime.
Thank you so much for being with us. You are the most wonderful and the most inspiring. Thank you for your candor and for your courage and for all of your amazing tips. I use them. Debbie uses them. We hope all our listeners will too.
Thanks, Anya.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
If you're enjoying this podcast, please rate us, send in a review, and make sure you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This podcast is distributed by the Women in Media Podcast Network. Find out more at womeninmedia.network.